في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إذ قال قومه لا تفرح إن الله لا يحب الفرحين صدق الله العلي العظيم. عطروا أفواهكم وزينوا مجالسكم بذكر الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد. Respected elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thoughts and emotions have a profound impact on one another. Oftentimes, our emotions are products of our thoughts. The way that we feel stems from the way that we think. And we know that sometimes our thoughts can be factually false. Our thoughts are not always a reflection of reality. So we can determine and we can conclude that thoughts can sometimes be irrational if they're not a reflection of reality. And because there is a close relationship between how we think and how we feel, between our thoughts and our emotions, we can also conclude that if our thoughts are irrational, the feelings and the emotions that are linked to those irrational thoughts are themselves irrational. My dear brothers and sisters, our thoughts are shaped by our beliefs. This is something that even Greek philosophers understood. Philosophers like Aristotle and others, they argued that beliefs are the foundation of emotions. The way that you look at the world, the way that you assign value to things is going to determine the way that you think, and consequently, it's going to impact the way that you feel. So our thoughts impact our emotions, and our thoughts are formulated by our beliefs. Let me give you an example. If you believe that something has great value, if you believe that something has great value, when that thing is presented, it evokes the emotion of joy. If you believe that something has value, has real value, when that thing is threatened, you feel fear. When something has value and that thing is taken away, you can experience the emotion of grief. So there is a very close relationship between beliefs and thoughts and emotions. Now, in Islamic psychology, emotions like happiness, sadness, grief, fear. These are all emotions. Emotions, from an Islamic perspective, are neutral in and of themselves. We're conditioned to believe that happiness is a good and healthy emotion in and of itself. But that's actually not true, because it's not always healthy to be happy. Sometimes happiness is an irrational emotion. Is sadness a good emotion or a bad emotion? Is it negative or is it positive? Is it healthy or is it unhealthy? The answer is that it's neutral. The way that we determine and we judge the appropriateness of an emotion or the health of an emotion is, we have to first ask, what is triggering that emotion? What is the cause of that emotion? I'll give you an example. The emotion of anger. The emotion of anger is not a negative emotion. You know, we often think of anger as something that is always negative, that needs to always be suppressed. But anger, in and of itself, it doesn't have any intrinsic value. It acquires value depending on what triggers the anger. I'll give you an example. Musa alayhi salam, when he goes to Mount Sinai, when he goes to the miqat to receive revelation, he disappears from his community for a period of 40 days. When he returns to Bani Israel, what does he see? He sees that his community has abandoned monotheism. They've abandoned Tawheed, and he finds that they are worshipping a golden calf. The Quran says, فَرَجَعَ مُوسَى إِلَىٰ قَوْمِهِ غَضْبَانَ أَسِفًا. Musa alayhi salam returns to his community. He sees what they're committing, and he becomes ghadban. He becomes extremely angry. Question: is the anger of Musa a rational emotion? Is it an appropriate reaction? Or is his anger irrational? His anger is rational. Why is his anger rational? Because his anger is stemming from what? From concern that his community is engaging in an act that is self-destructive. Because his thoughts about shirk are an accurate reflection of reality. So because his thoughts and his beliefs are a reflection of reality, his anger is justified. The anger of Musa is pleasing to Allah. It is praiseworthy. The same anger is sometimes blameworthy. When Malik al-Ashtar was walking through the marketplace and someone threw garbage at him, it angered him. But he suppressed that anger, because allowing that anger to fester and manifest is irrational. This is an ignorant person who did something foolish, it doesn't warrant anger. Because you shouldn't see yourself as so important that how dare such a person offend me or insult me. So when we look at human emotions, we have to understand that happiness, sadness, grief, all of these emotions are neither good nor are they bad in and of themselves. What makes grief good is if grief is triggered by something that has real value and importance. Anger is rational, is healthy, it's appropriate when anger is caused, when it's triggered by something that has real value and real importance. There's a narration where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where the Prophet, he asks his companions, he says to them, أَيُّ عُرَى he says, مَا أَوْثَقُ عُرَى الْإِسْلَامِ أَخْبِرُونِي بِأَوْثَقِ عُرَى الْإِسْلَامِ. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says to his companions, can anyone tell me the most secure handles that attach you to Islam? Ura is the plural of urwa. Urwa means something that you hold on to, that keeps you connected to something. So the Prophet says, what is the most important thing that keeps you connected to Islam, to your religion? Some of the companions, they said, Ya Rasulullah, salah. The Prophet says, no. Another one says, fasting. The Prophet says, no. Hajj, jihad, zakat. The Prophet says, no. None of these things. None of these things. Because with all of these examples, I can give you people who pray, fast, pay zakat, and they're the furthest away from Islam. Iblis. Was he able to hold on to his deen? He wasn't able to, even though he prayed. So the Prophet says what? أَوْثَقُ عُرَى الْإِسْلَامِ الْحُبُّ فِي اللَّهِ وَالْبُغْضُ فِي اللَّهِ. The firmest handle that connects you to Islam, the best thing is to love for the sake of Allah and to dislike for the sake of Allah. The reason is because if we go back to this idea of your beliefs are the foundation for your thoughts, and your thoughts are the foundation for your emotions. When you are connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who better than Allah to tell you what has real value? Who better than Allah to tell you about the things that are really important in life? The problem is, you and I, many of us are emotionally unwell because we assign importance to things that are not really important. And therefore, when we get those things, we feel happy. And that feeling of happiness it's inappropriate, because you're happy about something that doesn't have any value. And we feel grief and anxiety and sorrow oftentimes because we assign too much value to something that in reality doesn't have value. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what does He say in the Quran? In Surah Al-Hadid, verse 23. You and I, we assign a lot of value and importance to material possessions. وَإِنَّهُ لِحُبِّ الْخَيْرِ لَشَدِيدٌ. When people lose money, when they lose things, it breaks them. Why does it break them? Why do they feel sorrow and grief and they have so much anxiety? It's because they mistakenly assumed that those things have real value. Allah says in the Quran, لِكَيْ لَا تَأْسَوْا عَلَى مَا فَاتَكُمْ وَلَا تَفْرَحُوا بِمَا آتَاكُمْ. Dunya, this life, this material life, don't get too attached to it because it doesn't have real importance. It doesn't have real importance. Our emotions should be based on our beliefs. It should be the foundation. Our thoughts should be governed by our beliefs. It should be based on Allah and what Allah deems to be valuable. If you look at Iblis, Iblis prayed, but he was the furthest from Allah. Iblis prayed, according to the riwayat, for 6,000 years. Amir al-Mu'mineen, he says, we don't know if those years are from the calculations of dunya or from the calculations of those metaphysical realms. We don't know. Iblis hated Adam. Hate is an emotion. The hate that Iblis had towards Adam, was it rational or was it irrational? It was irrational. Why do you hate him? How can you hate someone that Allah loves? If Allah loves someone or something, it means that it has value. It has value to all of creation. Because when Allah loves something, Allah has no personal gain. Allah only loves that which is beautiful. He only loves that which provides khair and benefit to His creation. So when Allah loves Adam, if Iblis wants to demonstrate true faith and true iman, he should love what Allah loves. So we have to first, and this is why it's important to have a proper aqeedah, to have a proper belief system. So we are able to understand reality and to understand what really has value and what is trivial. I'll give you an example from the Quran about a person whose happiness was irrational. You know, as I said, in Western cultures, we're conditioned to think that do whatever makes you happy. It's not about what causes the happiness. We live in a culture where happiness in and of itself is the goal. Whatever makes you happy. Islam says no. Happiness is only healthy when the happiness is based on something with real value. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He shares with us the story of Karun. Surah 28, ayah 76. Inna Karun kana min qawmi Musa. Karun was from the people, from Bani Israel. He was a relative of Musa. So what's the deal with this guy? فَبَغَى عَلَيْهِمْ. He rebelled against his community. He betrayed the Israelites. وَآتَيْنَاهُ مِنَ الْكُنُوزِ مَا إِنَّ مَفَاتِحَهُ لَتَنُوءُ بِالْعُصْبَةِ أُولِي الْقُوَّةِ. Karun was so rich that it took groups of able-bodied men just to carry the keys to his treasures. So this is basically an ancient Jeff Bezos, right? Someone like that. Allah's given us an example of someone who we would call today a multi-billionaire. Multi-billionaire. And many people, many business people, they aspire to be that rich. They want to be millionaires and billionaires. His people, they notice that this Karun is very arrogant. He's too happy about his wealth. So what is causing his happiness? His wealth. Because he has a lot of money, and it's not that he even spends it. He just wants to accumulate. There are some people, they just receive psychological comfort from knowing that they have money. They don't use it. It's just in the bank. It makes them happy that they have money, and they can say they have money, and they can dress in a way that differentiates them from others. That's what's making them happy. So the Quran says, إِذْ قَالَ لَهُ قَوْمُهُ لَا تَفْرَحْ. Oh Karun, don't be too happy about having money. Because being, if from an Islamic perspective, if you found out today that you won $1 billion, what is the rational emotion? What is the Islamic reaction to that? People say, people that have heart attacks out of happiness. They're so overjoyed. Is happiness an appropriate reaction to receiving immense wealth? Actually, it's not. A more appropriate and measured reaction is probably to have some concern that now, if my qiyamah was going to be quick, now my qiyamah is going to be prolonged, because now I am accountable before Allah and the stakes are much higher now. So an appropriate feeling to have is to be actually worried. إِذْ قَالَ لَهُ قَوْمُهُ لَا تَفْرَحْ. His people told him, don't be happy. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ الْفَرِحِينَ. Allah does not love those who are happy. Now what does the ayah mean? Allah doesn't want us to be happy? No. Allah doesn't want our happiness to be triggered by things that don't have real value. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ الْفَرِحِينَ. Now here's another question for us to reflect on. From an Islamic perspective, if you think of happiness and sadness, if you had to choose between happiness and sadness, and imagine both of them are caused by something that is rational, which emotional state is more conducive to your spiritual development? To be happy or to be sad? We'll continue with the story of Karun. Karun was happy because he has all this wealth and he's healthy, he has real estate. When Allah gives you everything that you want and you're happy, what typically happens? You're much more likely to become arrogant and heedless. Allah, what does He say in Surah Al-Alaq, Surah 96, verses 6 and 7? كَلَّا إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَيَطْغَى. Verily, the human being is rebellious, transgresses. When does the human being transgress and go beyond the boundaries? كَلَّا إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَيَطْغَى أَن رَآهُ اسْتَغْنَى. When people feel that they are self-sufficient, that they're healthy, they have money, they have jobs, they don't have any problems, most people, they become arrogant. And this is exactly what happens to Karun. When his community tells Karun, ابتغي فيما آتاك الله الدار الآخرة. Oh Karun, you have all this money. Why don't you do something with this money that will secure your akhirah? ولا تنس نصيبك من الدنيا. Enjoy dunya, but also don't forget your akhirah. And then in the next ayah, what does he say? They say to him, وَأَحْسِنْ كَمَا أَحْسَنَ اللَّهُ إِلَيْكَ. Be good to others in the way that Allah has been good to you. What does Karun say? قال إنما أوتيته على علم عندي. He says, I acquired all of this wealth because of my intelligence, because I'm business savvy, I'm skilled, because I'm a good businessman. That's why I'm wealthy. He forgot Allah. He became delusional. So, my dear brothers and sisters, happiness in many cases leads people, especially when it's caused by something that doesn't warrant happiness. It causes people to deviate. But on the other hand, sadness is actually a good emotion if it's triggered by something that has real value. Because when people are sad, their hearts are more humble. You know, there's a beautiful statement of Amir al-Mu'mineen in Khutbatul Muttaqeen. The Imam gives an entire sermon describing the qualities of the pious. And he speaks about how useful it is to experience grief. You know, we're always trying to suppress grief. Whenever we feel sad, we try to distract ourselves. We want to get rid of the feeling of sadness. But look at what Imam Amirul Mu'mineen says about the muttaqeen. He says, أَمَّا اللَّيْلِ فَصَافُونَ أَقْدَامُهُم. The people of taqwa, at night, they stand in prayer. They stand in ibadah. تَالِينَ لِأَجْزَاءِ الْقُرْآنِ. They recite Quran at night when everyone is asleep. They choose times when they can focus without any distractions. تَالِينَ لِأَجْزَاءِ الْقُرْآنِ يُرَتِّلُونَهَا تَرْتِيلًا. They recite the Quran in a measured way. Some people, they recite the Quran as if the fire alarm has gone off and they're trying to read so they can escape the fire. They're in such a rush. The Quran needs to be read with reflection. The Quran is a heavy word. You got to allow time for your heart to absorb what you're reading. And then look at what the Imam says. يُحَزِّنُونَ بِهِ أَنفُسَهُم. Imam says the muttaqeen, they make themselves feel sad when they read the Quran. Why do they do this? Isn't the Quran supposed to make us happy? Why does Amir al-Mu'mineen say the muttaqeen, when they read the Quran, they make themselves feel sad? They're not trying to suppress sadness. They step in to the grief. They step in to the sadness. Why? The Quran is a very powerful book, my dear brothers and sisters, because the Quran is like a mirror that you put in front of your soul. The Quran is like a divine X-ray. When you read the Quran, you start to recognize your own spiritual illnesses. That's why people don't like reading the Quran, because the Quran forces you to confront the reality of who you are. And people are always running away from reality. يُحَزِّنُونَ بِهِ أَنفُسَهُم. They realize when they read the Quran that I have a lot of problems. I have a lot of spiritual diseases. And the Quran is shifa. وَنُنَزِّلُ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ مَا هُوَ شِفَاءٌ وَرَحْمَةٌ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ. The Quran is like a hospital. Have you ever seen any rational person who has a serious illness who goes to the hospital for treatment and is laughing in the lobby? You feel concerned because you understand that the stakes are high. This life is short. But in this short life, you are going to decide what your eternal life will be. And when you read the Quran, you realize that you have a long way to go. So it's good to feel sad. But I'm not talking about the sadness that becomes excessive and leads to depression. That's not the type of sadness that Amir al-Mu'mineen is speaking about. Because depression is debilitating. Depression means that you can't even function. We're talking about the sadness that inspires action. It's like the sadness you feel when you fail an exam. That sadness, that emotion becomes the driving force behind your success. It means that you push, you try harder, you work harder. So sadness, if there's anything that you can walk away with today, is that when you're sad or when you're happy, always ask yourself, why am I sad? Understand the reason. And if it's something silly, you need to reevaluate your beliefs. There's a beautiful saying that says that if small things make you angry, isn't that an indication of how small you are? If small things make you angry, if small things make you happy, if they make you sad, doesn't that indicate that you are small? When Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he finished building the Kaaba, the physical Kaaba, he raised the foundations, he started to gaze at the Kaaba. Allah revealed to Ibrahim, "Oh Ibrahim, are you happy? Are you satisfied?" He says, "Yes, I'm happy." Allah says, "Ibrahim, you put brick on brick. You constructed a physical building that doesn't have real value. Do you know what has real value to me, O Ibrahim? To feed the hungry. Feeding a hungry person should make you happy. Giving shelter to the homeless, that should make you happy. Some of us are more happy when we get Gucci shoes than if we get an opportunity to save people's lives. That's an irrational happiness. Some of us feel more sad when we don't buy something that's on sale, or if we miss a TV show. We feel more sad than the genocide that's happening in the world. That's an irrational sadness. Our sadness, our happiness, our emotions need to be connected to Allah, because Allah, who better than Allah to tell you what has real value and what doesn't have value? And one of the reasons why we see that the enemies of Ahlul Bayt, you know why they felt so much anger and resentment towards the Imams of Ahlul Bayt? Do you want to know why? Because they recognized the value, how much value these individuals had, and they were threatened by them. They were threatened by the presence of our Imams. And that anger, that resentment, that contentment that people like Ma'mun had towards Imam al-Rida, unfortunately, it didn't just remain in the world of emotion. It translated into some of the greatest crimes that were committed. Imam al-Rida alayhi salam was living in Medina. Ma'mun summons him to Khurasan. Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Rida, he spent years away from his family in Medina. This is why we call him Gharib al-Ghuraba, the stranger of Khurasan. Most of us, and Imam al-Rida, he had only one child. He had Imam al-Jawad. He had to leave. He was taken away from his son when he was 4 years old. Those of you who have children, how difficult is it for you when you just go to work? When you're separated from your children for a few days, 4 years. Imam al-Rida is away from Imam al-Jawad. away from his family. And Imam al-Rida is in a strange land, surrounded by people who pretend to respect him, who pretend to love him. On one occasion, Ma'mun, he invites Imam al-Rida to his court, to his palace. And this is after he witnessed the knowledge and the wisdom of the Imam, and how the Imam was able to debate leaders from different religious traditions. He saw that Imam al-Rida was gaining popularity. His goal was to belittle Imam al-Rida, to stump him, to find someone who could defeat him in debate. But no matter who he put in front of Ali ibn Musa, the Imam exposed the light of revelation. He poured out the fountains of prophetic knowledge. So Ma'mun decided that I have to finish this man, because his mere existence threatens my kingdom. So he invites Imam al-Rida. Imam al-Rida leaves his home. The home of Imam al-Rida, his residence in Khurasan, was very close to the palace of Ma'mun. It was walking distance. Imam al-Rida goes to the palace with his companion, Abu Salt. He says to him that I have been summoned by Ma'mun. I want you to accompany, but you're not allowed to go inside because he's invited only me. If I come out of the palace of Ma'mun and my abaya is on my head, don't speak to me and just walk with me back to my home. But if I come out without the abaya on my head, know that everything is fine and you can converse. So he enters into the palace. Ma'mun presents a tray of grapes. He knew that Imam al-Rida loved grapes. But these were not ordinary grapes. These grapes were poisoned. Dangerous, lethal poison was inserted into every individual grape. Ma'mun, he stands up. Look at the nifaq, look at the hypocrisy. He stood up and he welcomed Imam al-Rida. He hugs Imam al-Rida. He says, have a seat, O grandson of the Prophet. I have brought your favorite fruits. Have some grapes. Imam al-Rida politely declines. Ma'mun says, no, you have to eat. Imam says, are you saying that I don't have a choice? Ma'mun says, you don't have a choice, you have to eat. Imam al-Rida, he ate 2-3 grapes, and immediately he could feel an intense burning in his stomach. The effect of the poison was happening immediately before his eyes. The Imam's face became pale and he stands up. He puts the abaya on his head and he's preparing to leave. Ma'mun says, Ya ibn Rasulullah, eat more. Allahu Akbar. Imam looks at him angrily and he said that you've achieved what you wanted to achieve. Imam al-Rida alayhi salam, he walks out of the palace with the abaya on his head and he's holding his stomach. The house of Imam al-Rida was close. The narrations say that Abu Salt said that Imam al-Rida would walk and fall 40 times between the palace and the house. He would lose sensation in his legs. His legs couldn't even carry him to his house. And this reminds me of when Imam al-Hussein went to the body of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, when he saw Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas slain on the plains of Karbala, he had trouble even walking. قال الآن انكسر ظهري. My back is broken. The Imam alayhi salam was not able to walk. Similarly, now we see Ali ibn Musa al-Rida walking from the palace to his residence, but he's walking and he's falling. 40 times he rises and he falls. Abu Salt, he escorts Imam al-Rida to his home. He locks all the doors, he closes the windows. He says, I saw Imam al-Rida laying on a mat in one of the rooms. He was turning from side to side because of the pain that he was experiencing. He says, I locked all the doors and all the windows until suddenly I saw a young boy standing in the house. I said to him, who are you? How did you get into the house? قال يا أبا الصلت أنا حجة الله في أرضه. Oh, Abba Salt, I am Muhammad ibn Ali. I am the son of Imam al-Rida. Where is my father? Imam al-Rida, he hears his son. Imagine, it's been 4 years since Imam al-Rida has seen his Imam al-Jawad. Imam al-Jawad enters the room. He sees his father in severe pain. He's going in and out of consciousness. Imam al-Jawad, he holds his father in his lap. He puts the head of his father in his lap. Imam al-Rida is unconscious. The narrations say that the teardrops of Imam al-Jawad fell on the face of Imam al-Rida. Imam al-Rida wakes up because of those teardrops. He gives him his wasiyah. He says that you are the Imam after me, but I have one request from you, ya waladi. What is it, oh my father? He says to him, ya bunay, I want you to remove the carpets and the mats. Why, oh my father? He says, I want to lay on the ground. I want to lay on the sand. I want to meet my Lord like my grandfather, Aba Abdullah, who died on the plains of Karbala. But I say to you, Ya Ali ibn Musa al-Rida, that at least you didn't have to see your son killed in front of your eyes. When you were dying, Imam al-Jawad was holding your hand. But Imam al-Hussein, when he went to the battlefield and he saw Ali al-Akbar, he saw the body of his son mutilated, and he put his cheek on the cheek of Ali and he cried out, Waladi Ali ala dunya ba'daka al-afa. Oh my son Ali, this world has no value after you. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to accept these tears of sadness and sorrow. We ask Allah to purify our hearts, to forgive us our shortcomings. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to grant a speedy recovery to all of those who are afflicted with illnesses. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to resolve all of the problems that people have, to relieve them of their distress. And we ask Allah Azza wa Jal to fill the heart of Imam Sahib al-Zaman with happiness and joy. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to remove from his heart anything that distresses him and pains him. And most importantly, we ask you, O Allah, to grant us, for the sake of holding this humble majlis, to include us among those who receive the shafa'ah of Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Rida, the stranger of Khurasan. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa alihi al-tahirin.